On December 19, 2003, a single letter arrived. 1 page, 4 words that mattered. This account does not exist. That letter came from Bank of America. It was about a bank account in the Cayman Islands, an account that held nearly 4 billion euros, an account that appeared on every audit, every financial report, every bond offering for over a decade, an account that was the foundation of one of Europe's most respected food companies. It never existed, not for one single day. And the man who built that lie? He was selling milk. Parma, Italy, 1961. A 22-year-old college dropout inherits a tiny family business. Salted meats, preserves, nothing glamorous. His name is Calisto Tanzi, and instead of running his father's shop, he makes a bet that almost nobody else in Europe was willing to make. He bets on milk, not just any milk, ultra-high temperature milk. UHT, it's a processing technique that heats milk to such extreme temperatures that it kills all bacteria and then lets you seal it in a carton that lasts for months without any refrigeration. No fridge needed, no cold chain, no expiration problem. Think about what that means. Before UHT, you couldn't ship fresh milk from Italy to Brazil. You couldn't sell dairy in rural Africa where electricity is unreliable. You couldn't reach tropical markets that had never tasted fresh dairy products before. Tanzi saw all of that. He saw a product that could travel anywhere in the world, and a world that hadn't been reached yet. He named the company by fusing the words Parma and latte, milk in Italian. Parmalat, the milk of Parma for the world. It worked. God did it work. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Parmalat went on a global acquisition spree. 30 countries, 6 continents, factories in Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, Canada. They sponsored Formula One teams. They bought Parma's soccer club. 36,000 employees. The company listed on the Milan Stock Exchange in 1990 and became one of the cornerstones of Italian institutional investing. And here is why everyone believed. Here is the key difference between Parmalat and every other fraud we've covered on this channel. Parmalat was not selling a dream. They were not selling a vision or a disruption or a revolutionary technology that would change the world someday. They were selling milk, physical, real, drinkable milk, the kind your grandmother put in her coffee every morning, the kind sitting in your fridge right now, probably in a Parmalat carton. When a tech startup inflates its numbers, you can at least ask, well, the product is unproven. When a crypto exchange collapses, you can say, well, nobody really understood how it worked. You cannot say that about milk. That's what made this fraud almost perfectly invisible. The product was real. The revenues were partially real. The factories existed. The employees showed up to work. Tanzi was not a Silicon Valley showman with a turtleneck and a messiah complex. He was a quiet, Catholic Italian patriarch who went to church on Sundays and talked about his workers like they were family. Nobody was looking for a fraud, because everything looked exactly like it was supposed to look. So when did it start? When did Calisto Tanzi cross the line? Not with one big decision, with one small lie. Investigators and Tanzi himself later admitted that the fraud began as a cover-up of operating losses, small gaps between the real numbers and the reported numbers. Losses from bad acquisitions, struggling markets, a travel company called Parmatour that Tanzi ran as a personal side project, and that was hemorrhaging money. Instead of disclosing those losses to shareholders, he chose to hide them. One hiding, then another, then the gap got bigger. Then you needed to borrow money to cover the gap. Then you needed fake assets to justify the borrowing. Then the fake assets had to look real to auditors. Then the auditors needed documents. Then the documents needed to look official. Before long, the CFO, a man named Fausto Tonna, had turned this into a machine. 4 times a year, every quarter, a systematic operation of document forgery kicked into gear. Fake invoices, fake bank confirmations, fake intercompany transactions, all feeding into a secret internal ledger they called Account 999, containing over 8 billion euros in fabricated transactions that simply did not exist in the real world. But the crown jewel of the entire scheme? A ghost company, Bankruptcy Financing Corporation, registered in the Cayman Islands, a place specifically chosen because it was difficult to audit and easy to obscure. According to the books, Parmalat held €3,950 million in a Bank of America account. This number appeared on every balance sheet, every bond prospectus, every document that banks and ratings agencies and institutional investors relied on to decide whether Parmalat was creditworthy. And while all of this was being constructed, Tanzi was quietly moving money out. Approximately €500 million transferred over the years into Parmalat, his private family travel company, which operated at a loss that he personally financed with his shareholders' money. Here's the thing about this fraud that makes it so instructive. Parmalat was simultaneously claiming to hold nearly €4 billion in cash and aggressively issuing new bonds at high interest rates. Think about that for a second. If you had $4 billion sitting in a bank account, would you be borrowing money and paying expensive interest on it? Of course not. You'd pay down your debts. But nobody asked that question out loud. Not for 10 years. In January 2003, CFO Tona made a unilateral decision to announce a €300 million bond issue without fully coordinating with Tanzi first. When Tanzi found out, he pulled the offering immediately and fired Tona on the spot. The market noticed. Parmalat's stock dropped 30% in days. Debt rating agencies started circling. Journalists started asking questions. Tanzi brought in a New York restructuring firm to help stabilize things. In a private meeting meant to be confidential, Parmalat's own representatives revealed the real debt figure, €10 billion, double what the public accounts showed, and $2.9 billion in bonds the company claimed to have already repurchased. Still outstanding. The restructuring firm walked out. Meanwhile, the auditors, two of them, Deloitte, audited the parent company. Grant Thornton audited Parmalat, the Cayman Islands subsidiary. This split arrangement meant that neither firm ever had complete visibility over the entire financial picture. The fraud was architecturally designed to exploit that blind spot. All it would have taken in any year for any auditor at any moment over a decade was one phone call to Bank of America. Can you confirm this account exists? Nobody made that call. December 19, 2003. Bank of America issues a public statement. The Parmalat account, the nearly €4 billion foundation of Parmalat's entire balance sheet, does not exist. The document Parmalat submitted was a forgery. The bank signature was fake. The Milan Stock Exchange halted trading in Parmalat shares the same day. 8 days later, on December 27, 2003, Parmalat was declared insolvent, the largest corporate bankruptcy in European history at the time. Calisto Tanzi was arrested. 29 executives were charged. 4 major international banks, Citigroup, UBS, Morgan Stanley, and Deutsche Bank, were indicted by an Italian judge for allegedly helping structure the fraudulent instruments. Grant Thornton and Deloitte faced investigations for catastrophic audit failures. Tanzi was ultimately sentenced to 18 years in prison in 2010. Combined sentences across all proceedings reached 83 years. He died in January 2022, having never fully served them due to appeals and health deterioration. 36,000 people work for this company. Tens of thousands of ordinary Italian retail investors, retirees, school teachers, factory workers, had put their savings into Parmalat bonds because they trusted the brand in their fridge. They lost everything. Not hedge funds, not institutions, grandparents. So what do you do with this story? First, cash on a balance sheet is a claim, not a fact. Parmalat claimed nearly $4 billion in cash while borrowing heavily at high interest rates. That contradiction is one of the most reliable red flags in corporate finance. When a company holds massive cash reserves but keeps issuing expensive debt, something doesn't add up. Always calculate the net position, total cash minus total debt. The number that matters is what's left. Second, offshore complexity is camouflage. Parmalat operated hundreds of subsidiaries across the Cayman Islands and similar jurisdictions. Legitimate businesses use offshore structures, but when the complexity far exceeds any plausible operational reason, it exists to prevent you from seeing clearly. If you can't understand why a food company needs 200 offshore entities, neither can the auditors. And that's exactly the point. Third, split audits are structural blind spots. Parmalat deliberately used two different audit firms for the parent and its key subsidiary. No single firm ever saw the complete picture. Before investing in any company, check whether one independent auditor is responsible for the entire consolidated entity, or whether oversight is conveniently fragmented. Fourth, family control without independent governance is a loaded gun. Tanzi controlled Parmalat like a personal kingdom despite it being a public company. The board had no real independence, nobody questioned the CEO. For long enough, the CEO eventually stops questioning himself. The next fraud is already being built somewhere right now, behind a real product, a trusted brand, a quiet patriarch with a church attendance record. Subscribe to Capital Sins so you don't miss the next investigation. And if this case taught you something today, drop a like. It tells us to keep digging.